Welcome dear chess friends in chapter 10. So we are almost on the end of the database. We just need to see some sidelines for white at move 4. In this video we will focus on the move c3, which is quite important move, and in the next one we will speak about all the remaining sidelines. Let's speak about c3 now. I know very well what white wants to achieve because I played also c3 myself in many games actually with white. What is the idea? The idea is to achieve the system that white plays against bishop f5. So white plays knight f3, e6, bishop e2, c5, c3. And white wants to achieve the same position also against the c5 line. And it's actually a very practical choice because white can play c3 here. Most likely he will transpose into this line, and so he can just study one line instead of two, yeah? Same line against bishop f5 and against c5. Of course, I still didn't say you how to achieve the same position, but white can achieve it if also black wants. So now let's see the moves. We play knight c6. If white plays knight f3, this is harmless move order because we have the chance to develop the bishop on g4. That's why white should start with bishop e2, not with knight f3. I also played many games. I was always starting with bishop e2, yeah? But be careful, just not bishop g4 immediately because this e5. But first you take on d4 and now bishop g4. So yeah, knight f3 harmless, but don't make the mistake to play bishop g4. First capture on d4 and then bishop g4. Bishop e2, e6. If knight d2, this positional inaccuracy, because we can play bishop b4, take on d2. Knight e7, then we can take on f3. White will have two bishops, but we play knight f5, queen b6. And who will defend the pawn on d4 is not clear. Of course, queen d2 was necessary because with bishop d2 we had bishop f3, knight takes d4, yeah? So better for white to play castle, but now knight e7, and then or knight c8 or knight f5. If knight c3, for example, knight f5, the threat is bishop f3 and knight takes d4, bishop e3, bishop b4. Very good square for the bishop, castle, no problem, of course, for black. Bishop e3 invites knight f5, okay, now white can play knight c3 and transposing after bishop b4, or white can play knight d2, now bishop e7 probably, h3, bishop h5. Important thing. We play knight f5 only now because after h3 we can play bishop h5. Why? Because if g4 we have the option to take on e3 and play bishop g6. That's very important. So no g4 move for white. Of course, if white's bishop was on c1, we wouldn't play this thing with knight on knight f5 because after h3 we would need to play bishop h5, but g4. And after h3 I don't want to take on f3 because knight f3 and white will be slightly better, yeah? So here I play knight f5 because after h3 I can take on f3 and white can recapture with the bishop, not with the knight, yeah? Of course, knight takes f3 is much better for white, yeah? So that's important. But here there is no g4 option. Rook c1, normal move, we can play castle, a3, we can stop b4. Let's say queen b3, queen b8, queen a7, rook c8. No problem, of course, no problem. Slightly better for black. Probably knight d2 is the best, it's also the most common continuation. And now, yes, it's what I was explaining you before. If we play knight f5, now white will play h3. And the bishop is on c1, the knight is on d2. We cannot play bishop h5 because of g4 now, no knight takes c3. And we don't want to take on f3 because knight f3 and white has a good version. So yeah, just remember this detail, yeah? We play knight f5 only when white played knight c3 or when white played bishop e3, yeah? Very important. Because if knight c3, after h3 we can take and white has to recapture with the bishop. If white's bishop is on e3, after h3 we can play bishop h5 because against g4 we have knight takes c3. That's the logic. After knight d2, we can play knight c8, of course, this is possible, but NG says it's equal. But white can play bishop e3, rook c1, knight c5, and you know, equal position, but at least white has 3 clear moves, which are also good moves actually. I don't want to give this to my opponent. I want to play something more creative. I want to play a5 move. It's a novelty actually. After h3, bishop h5, a3, let's say. Best for the engine, we can play knight c8. And now it's knight b3, what is the idea? My idea is to take and play a4. So that's the idea of a5. But white can play the tricky move knight b1, trying to use the weakened b5 square, yeah? Now we can play queen b6, it's also fine if you want to have a game this, yes. Castle f5 next. Engine evaluation is 0, 0, 0, because it's very unclear even for the engine this position, yeah. Of course, it's very interesting to play castle f5, very interesting queen b6. But if you want to equalize by force, you can take on f3. So bishop f3 is to make a draw, queen b6 is to have a game, yeah. After bishop f3, queen b6, bishop e3 necessary move to defend d4. We can take on b2, now no knight c3. Knight d2, bishop e7. White's a draw because white can play rook b1, queen a3. No rook b7 because castle, okay, we have an extra pawn. Maybe it's not full pawn, maybe white has some compensation, but not full compensation, yeah? But white can make a draw in a very strange way. If queen b2, rook b1. If queen d3, it looks like we are escaping with the queen, but no escape, yeah? White can repeat with the bishop, queen f5, bishop g4, just no squares to escape with the queen, it's a draw by repetition. White has to repeat because he is 2 pawns down. So you see, you can choose between, here you can choose, okay, first of all, it's already novelty move a5, but if white will play so well, knight b1, you can choose if to have a game like this, castle f5 next, or if to equalize immediately in this way. Or also here, white needs to be a bit precise, yeah, white needs to understand that, okay, not difficult to understand, but okay, yeah, so not 100% immediately draw, yeah, but if white plays 2-3 good moves, it will be a draw, yeah, by repetition. That's why white usually starts with the move bishop e2. Because now after bishop f5, now knight f3, and the bishop is already on f5, yeah? But before going to bishop e2, let me also mention that there is also a tricky move bishop e3. It's not a good move for white, because black solves immediately all the problems. But the point is that you solve all the problems with only one good move. That's why after I discovered this bishop e3 move, I often play it in some bullet games or some blitz games online. Because it's very rare, and not all black players are aware of the best reaction for black. So you just need to remember one move, but you need to remember it, yeah? That's important. I'm sure that most of grandmasters don't know it, because bishop e3 is very rare. Only knight h6 is good move. Very logical. Against bishop on e3, knight goes to f5, g4. But it's also possible not to play it, yeah? So useful to know knight h6. Of course, we are not afraid of this capture because we just play queen b6, slightly better for black. If knight f3, knight f5, no problem, maybe even black is preferable. Bishop d3 the best probably, and knight e2, this is the NG recommendation. We can take on e3, play g6, this is how I like to play. You can play with bishop h6, yeah, but also with bishop g4. I prefer bishop g4 actually, to capture the knight, then bishop h6, castle, and f6, no problem for black. Yeah, so this is about bishop e3 move. Of course, in the file I also explain f4, I explain the move bishop b5, but okay, no serious move, I will say. You can play here queen a5 with idea cd4, you can play cd4 and bishop f5. e6, knight e7 next, bishop on b5 is misplaced. The only idea to justify it would be bishop takes c6, but it's not working well, so no problem for black. But white's main idea is bishop e2, yes. And now you for sure can play bishop f5 and d6, and we transpose, that's what I was saying you in the start of this lesson, we can transpose to this line, which we actually also covered in our Caro-Kann part 1, where we analyzed e5, bishop f5 for black. So, this fighting position, yeah, it's a fighting position, and it's interesting for white, it's interesting for black. I played it with both colors. Of course, white doesn't have an objective advantage, because the Caro-Kann is a great opening, but white can play, white can try. There is no immediate way to kill the game for black. But black will be fine if he knows what he's doing. And it will be a fight. So you can definitely play this. In this case, you can check our Caro-Kann part 1. But here I wanted to offer you something independent and something that I was always worried when I was playing with white, this c3 move. So I hope nobody will watch this video, so that nobody will play this against me, because I never knew what to do if here black plays cd4, cd4 and queen b6. And this is the extra option to keep it independent from the 3 bishop f5 line, yeah? Okay, now what is the point? If you just defend the pawn with white, bishop g4, then e6, knight e7, bishop takes f3 at some moment, no problem for black as usual. Knight c3 is the only way for white to try something. And now not e6, now knight f3, and of course, no bishop g4, yeah? We play a French, where we exchange too early on d4, because now you know, in the French, advanced French, you shouldn't exchange too early on d4 because white has the possibility to develop the knight on c3, especially when your queen is on b6, some knight a4 temp in the future. So this is very bad for black. But the idea is, of course, queen takes d4. Now knight takes d5 is the only move for white to fight for something, because if queen d4 this is better version for us. Rook b8. Knight c2 is also a threat. So bishop d3 engine move, but you can play bishop f5. It's good for black, yeah? Let's say something like this. e6, a6, okay. h5 to consolidate the knight, so no g4 moves. And then you can just play knight e7, king e8, then knight c6, bishop e7, no problem. Absolutely fine endgame. So knight takes d5, only critical move for white. Now we can take bishop d1, and very important point. Okay, first of all, we have an endgame, yeah? And that's already a very good thing of this queen b6 line. Because we just need to study this endgame, basically, yeah? I don't believe that white is better here. Also, when I was playing with white, I never knew what to do here, because, okay, my hope was that black would not play this line, and if black plays this line, maybe black will not be so well prepared, yeah? This was my hope. Because, you know, there are not too many games here, just 4 games here. So very rare continuation, but with this you kill basically the c3 line. And now, very important moment, because we play rook b8, don't play a move with the king. Because we are ready to give up on castling rights, only if white spends the tempo for knight c7, yeah? So don't play king d8, knight f3, white is better, play rook b8. If white will play knight c7 at some moment, okay, we'll move the king, but white also lost the tempo for knight c7, that's the point. I told you there are 4 games, and 2 times white played bishop f4, 2 times white played f4. No, actually f4 1 time, bishop f4 3 times. But bishop f4 is the most common continuation, but it's already dubious for white. I mean that here black can be also slightly better, maybe. Or at least black can have the more pleasant endgame. So we play e6. Now bishop b4 check, knight g7, bishop on f4 is just misplaced. No need to analyze further, the engine already shows minus 010, something like this. Black has already an excellent endgame. Simply excellent. f4 is also not so dangerous, because we play bishop f5. If knight f3, e6. Okay, if knight c3, if knight e3, bishop e4, no problem. Knight c7, king d7, knight b5, a6. Knight g7 next, no problem, of course. Bishop e3 is the first engine move. e6, knight c7, king d7, knight b5. So white has a tempo against a7. Okay. And now no bishop b4 because of bishop f3. Yeah, this is actually important to remember. We play knight g7. And after bishop f3, we play g5. That's the best reaction. Why no bishop b4? Because our bishop will go to g7 here. Bishop g7 next, and we have a very good endgame. Of course, white needs to think about the bishop. I don't think white wants to allow knight sf3. Just bishop g7 next, equal pawns, good pieces. No problem, very playable endgame, we can play for 2 results. Knight f3 is probably the best for white, it's the critical line, but it's a novelty. It's a novelty knight f3. We can play e6. Of course, if white just goes back, bishop b4, knight e7, no problem. Only critical move, knight c7. King d7, knight b5. Bishop b4. Bishop d2 is positional mistake, because now we can take and play knight h6, king e7 next, and no problem for black, of course. Not only no problem, it's slightly better for black, because e5 could be potentially weak. So best move for white is king e2. The idea is very easy, to play bishop a4 and rook d1 to maximize the piece activity. Of course, what I show you from now, I just analyzed very deeply to be sure that white doesn't have any idea, and also analyzed very deeply because I was also playing for white side, yeah? So I thought that king e2 is the best hope for white, and okay, it's my opinion, engine's opinion also. But it's a new position, so it's unlikely we'll reach it. That should be clear. But if you're interested in endgames, we can continue a bit here. Knight g7 is a mistake, I think, because bishop e4, a4, rook d1 check, and I don't think we're in time to solve all the problems. This was my opinion when I was analyzing from white side. It's still my opinion, but I think that even here, if black is precise, something like this, for example, bishop e7 against knight g5, bishop a5 is a threat, king b6, even here this is the maximum white can achieve, and it's only a symbolical advantage, of course. If I would be white, okay, I would think, okay, I can try, but I wouldn't believe too much, yeah, in this position. But of course white can try, but very, very small chances. Very small chances. So even knight g7 is possible to play, but I think a6 is more accurate. After a6, if knight c3, knight d7, no problem, knight g6 next. If knight d4 you can take, knight e7, then rook d8, king e8, then you solve the problems with bishop c8, bishop d7 probably. No problem, of course. Only critical move is a a3. And now what is the point? If we take here, for the engine this is 0-0. But I played a lot of tournaments, I know what does it mean to play against two bishops. I don't think here we will suffer a lot, but we will suffer a bit. And that's already something that I want to avoid with black, yeah? This is the kind of position that I would not be happy with white, because I wouldn't believe too much. But also I wouldn't be happy with black, because I just play for a draw and no immediate draw, yeah? So that's not a good opening outcome in my opinion. To fight for a draw but no immediate draw, yeah? I mean, to just fight for a draw and no immediate draw, that's not a good opening outcome. So my recommendation is to play bishop c5. Because now if I place b4, now I'm ready to give the two bishops. Okay, first of all, you can also play like this. Now two bishops, but extra pawn. Of course, white has full compensation, but it's different story. But even ab5, this is a different position because rook a8, and this structure is better to... is improved version for black against the two bishops, yeah? So this is not a problem. You can choose between bishop b4 or ab5. In both cases, this easy equality. And I think that here, for example, I can feel that if white is not precise, I can also play for a win maybe in the future. Of course, to say here that I play for a win is too much, but I can see pictures where I start to play for a win if white is not precise. Here it's very difficult to imagine pictures where I fight for a win, yeah? So that's also the difference. Knight c3 is the best here, the most critical move. I'm not sure about knight d4, because white can play bishop f4 check, king e7 and bishop f4. Knight on g8, very bad. Also here, if you check with the engine, this is pretty fine. Knight e7. I guess it will be 9 times out of 10 draw. And maybe 1 time white will win, yeah? That's my guess here. So, which is also not bad, yeah? Because not the worst outcome in the opening. But no need to go for this. Knight g7. If bishop a4, just rook d8, king e8. You know that our typical idea is rook d8, king e8. Only critical move for white is knight e4, bishop a7. And now bishop should go to b3. Why? If bishop c2, we have knight d5 square. So better bishop b3 to control the d5 square. Now rook d1, rook d8. And white can try rook d1 or white can try knight d6. Okay, we're already very far, yeah, in the analysis, because as I mentioned, there are only 4 games here and knight f3 was a novelty. So here, after these moves, I just check because I want to be extremely sure, yeah? After knight d6, knight d5 is a good move, because knight f7, rook f8, and knight d4 check is the idea. So knight f7, dubious move. And after rook d1, rook king e8, now knight d6 is possible, something like this, but also here it will be interesting position. It will be equal in the end, with some complications. Or rook d8, knight d6, king f8, knight c6, knight g6, something like this. And you already has b6, knight b7. Knight b7 next, no problem. But what I want to say, I invite you from here to check the file, yeah? Because it doesn't make sense to show you all my analysis here. I still continue for quite a lot. If you want to be perfectionist, you can check the analysis, of course. Or it's more than enough to remember till here, in my opinion, yeah? Because it's very unlikely somebody will play like this. And in this way, I think this is a very good solution. Because, okay, it's a lot of lines, but just because I was very deep, yeah? But in general, after watching this video, you can repeat for 10 minutes and then you can play this line, of course, because all you need to remember is to play rook b8. Here it's already very likely that white will not play knight f3. So if white doesn't play knight f3, it's immediately fine for black. So I think this is a very good alternative. I prefer to show you this here instead of repeating what you can achieve also from here, because we have already seen this position in Caro-Kann part 1. So I wanted to give you something independent and something that was always a problem for me when I was playing with white. Nobody played queen b6 against me, yes, luckily. But it was always a worry for me before the game. If somebody plays queen b6, imagine play with some 2200 player. He plays queen b6. And then I need to invent something in an equal endgame. Not easy outcome psychologically if you play with white, yeah? So I was always worried about this and I never understood why black is not playing this so often. I am sure that after this course, everybody will start to play queen b6 and kill the game against this move order. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next chapter, the last one, where we'll speak about the other sidelines for white at move 4. Bye.